Y'all always move me. Always. Music is one of my love languages. Thank you, Thomas, for that great. I feel like I've already heard the sermon, so that was perfect. I can't remember if I shared the topic with you or not, but you did it beautifully. So I want to begin with a joke, and too bad Terry Olson isn't here because she loves it when I tell a joke. She's way better at jokes than I am. One day at church, a priest delivers a sermon about the importance of forgiving your enemies. When he is a third of the way through the sermon, he says, "Raise your hand if you are now willing to forgive your enemies." Half of the people in the church raise their hands, so the priest continues the sermon. When he is 2/3 of the way through the sermon, he says, "Raise your hand if you are now willing to forgive your enemies." 3/4 of the people in the church raise their hands, so the priest continues the sermon. When he has completely finished the sermon, he says, "Raise your hand if you are now willing to forgive your enemies." All the people in the church raise their hands, except one woman who happens to be the oldest one in the church. I think y'all know where it's going. The priest goes to the woman and asks, "Why are you still unwilling to forgive your enemies?" "Simple," she replies. "I have no enemies." "How old are you?" 96. "And you have no enemies?" "None at all." The priest is amazed. "Come up to the front with me." So the priest and the woman go up to the front of the church. The priest says, "Please explain to my entire congregation how it is possible that you have no enemies." "Simple," she says. "I outlived them all." Mm-hmm. If only, right? We're not all guaranteed to outlive our enemies, are we? But we poke fun of that, but one of the things that it doesn't say is you can have your enemies make a transition and that they can still be very alive in you, right? You having not forgiven them, right? So that's what again, I want us to review the practice of forgiveness because it is let me take ownership. It has been such a challenging practice for me. So I will say for me, right? Maybe it isn't for you, but it is for me. So I want to talk about unlimited forgiveness again, and then we're learning a new practice. And the new practice is universal benevolence. That's the new practice, universal benevolence. Hence my title, Widening the Circle, because that is exactly what universal benevolence is. It's actually widening the circle to include more than just myself or my kind, right? That's what it is. So before I get started with that, I just want to review what we've already talked about, because the thing about this, and here's the book if you haven't seen it, it's by a Unity minister, Robert Brummett. I've had the pleasure, my sister as well, as having retreats with him, and he was an instructor of mine, and he's just a wonderful minister and mentor and teacher and author. And his book is, what he says is, we need to live originally. What he means by that is living from that origin, right? That place where we are originally made in the image and the likeness. And we can choose to live from that. We can connect to that origin. Because instead, very often, and we can see it in the world, we live in an ego-soaked world. Would you not agree? And perhaps at times ourselves, myself included, can be ego-soaked. And that is what he calls the false self. It's not making it wrong. That's not at all it. We are not making it wrong. But what he says is that the ego can only develop to a certain extent, right? It can only develop to a certain extent. And so what we are here to do, especially if we're on spiritual paths, which I know if you're here, that's what you're on. And if you're on a spiritual path, you know that that path will help you transform so that you will transcend the ego-soaked, or egocentricity is really the word, but I prefer ego-soaked, the ego-soaked self, the false self. So he offers practices, and I'm going to review them. And the first one is radical self-acceptance. And I did that again in the meditation. And in the formal practice, it's really just, I'm sorry, Radical self-awareness. Acceptance is next. The very first practice is radical self-awareness. And it's simply just becoming aware. Aware that you're aware that you're aware, right? Aware of everything and just awareness. That's it. Aware of the body, aware of the mind thinking, because then you can be a witness to it, right? You don't have to add anything to it. You can just witness it. And the thing about when you practice it, and he says you practice it formally every single day. And the thing is when you do have a formal practice, then it's going to go into your daily practice. Have you noticed that? Yes. Then when you're in your day-to-day, you can like hear the thinking and just like, oh, there's thinking going on. Just be a witness to it and not like get in there with it or get in there and fight it, which is what I'm really good at, right? So that's the second, I'm really good at that. So that's the second practice. I know. Thank you, Keith. So that's the second practice, which is deep self-acceptance, right? And what that is just accepting it just as it is, just as it shows up. It's not resisting, meaning fighting life, which, like I said, I'm good at. It's not judging it, condemning it, or it's not desiring it to be different. That's what acceptance is. And that feeds straight into, you see how they build? They're all building blocks, right? And it feeds right into unlimited forgiveness. Because think of it this way, the more you can accept whatever it is as it is, then you're able to forgive it, right? Yes. Because you're not invested in it being any different than it already is. You're like, oh, well, that's what it is. I can forgive it. So I want to talk about forgiveness again because I came across this amazing prayer. And he gives us like 7 steps, but I just want to focus on one of those steps. And then I want us to move into universal benevolence because, again, they build one on another. And the more you can practice forgiveness, the more you can open and widen the circle to universal benevolence. So that's what we're doing this morning. And as always, I have an affirmation for you. And the affirmation is, no one is outside my circle of loving kindness. Just say that with me. No one is outside my circle of loving kindness. And this includes me. This includes me. How does that feel? Does that feel good? No one is outside my circle of loving kindness, and this includes me. So I say this includes me because as we've been practicing, I've been practicing these practices with all of you, and so this past week was just a really big growth week for me. Some of you I've shared it was just a really big growth week, and sometimes those growth weeks just feel hard, right? They just feel like, oh, it just feels hard. And that's kind of how it felt. And so as I've been doing awareness and acceptance and again struggling with forgiveness, I recognize my nature of feeling like I have to please everyone. It's really my nature. I was just conditioned in that way, believing I have to please. And then another piece of that is feeling like my validation is outside of me. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. It's a hard piece, right? It's a hard piece. And then imagine trying to forgive yourself for it. That's an even bigger one, right? So that's why we're reviewing forgiveness again, y'all. Because y'all are coming into my practice. So he says forgiveness. I love what he says. He says, it's so simple. Forgiveness is really just accepting an experience and leaving it in the past. That's it. I love that, Queen. Accepting an experience and leaving it in the past. So, have you ever heard yourself telling the same story? Yes. And you tell it over and over and over. Or do you notice the way you tell the story? That's the biggest piece. What kind of energy is around the word? Is it like, well, then he said, well, then I said, well, then he said, and then I said, right? That energy around the words lets you know where you are with the story, right? But if you're, so I've noticed when I've done that, I'm like, I don't want to tell that story anymore. And when you don't want to tell that story anymore, that is when you are ripe and ready for forgiveness. So leaving it in the past as just an experience, right? So he offers 7 different steps. If you have the app, you know that they're in there. Notice my plug for the app. All 7 are there. But the one I want to focus on is step 3. And in this step, he says to ask our higher power for help. And so I found this prayer by Unity minister and author Imelda Shanklin. And she, just to give you a background about her, she became ordained in 1918. She, in 1907, was one of only 4 employees at Unity. Imagine. She was also an editor of all the Unity publications. She's written books. One of them is What Are You? That's right. I have it on my desk right now. What Are You? But this one is from her book called Selected Studies that was published in 1926, and it's a prayer of forgiveness. So I'm going to read it to you and just let it have its way with you. Just let it speak to you and just see what jumps up at you, because it really did for me. O God of love and forgiveness, love and forgive in me. All that has offended me, I forgive. Whatever has made me bitter, unhappy, or restless, I forgive. From henceforth I shall remember that thy spirit animating me and all others is perfect, holy, that thy presence makes this planet heaven. I forgive everything that I have remembered as offense. I forgive everything which, not remembering, may have been an offense to me. If there be in the depths of subconsciousness that which holds itself as offense, I forgive. I let it go and can no more be offended by it. I forgive that thy love might cleanse my soul, that thy life might flow through my flesh and make me again to be the undisguised image likeness. I forgive the ignorance of the past, and from this moment I hold thy mind to be my mind, that the light eternal may make bright the paths of my soul. Within and without, in the past, in the present, and in the things to come, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive. I know, right? Right? That's in the app. I say that because that is going to be my daily practice for now on. Every day, morning and the evening, I'm just going to read it. It is so heart-opening, isn't it? It's so heart-opening. I came across what Eric Butterworth, Unity minister, and just to give another plug, I'm all full of plugs this morning, aren't I? Third plug is that in the fall, we're going to have a fall faith series, and we are going to study Discover the Power Within You, Eric Butterworth, just so you know what's to come. All of us will be giving, anyone who is up here speaking, will work on a chapter from that book, and then after sermon, we will talk about it. So anyway, that's to plug Eric Butterworth. And he came across this, and he says some beautiful things about her. He said that she's one of Unity's great teachers, and he says that this forgiveness prayer is a prayer test. And what he says, and I love that, he says, what she is saying is, Father, forgive me for expecting in the human that which is found only in the divine. In other words, I have sinned. Now, know in Unity what we mean by sin is missing the mark. We go back to the Hebrew word. It's just missing the mark. I have sinned by expecting in the human of the person something that can be found only in Christ within the individual. So what does that mean? I must take responsibility for myself, right? Expecting the Christ in every human. It makes me think, am I always that living Christ, right? So I can forgive myself of that just as I can forgive others. Isn't that beautiful? And that's a way of doing step 3 of how your higher power helps you, how God helps you. So forgiveness is the piece that takes us into universal benevolence. And let me just explain what universal benevolence is. Universal benevolence is what we say during Christmas, right? Goodwill to all. That's really what universal benevolence is. But the idea here is that we don't just practice at Christmas, right? We practice it all the time. It's the idea of really wanting goodwill for everyone. I know that's something I say every Sunday. It's what I want for myself, I want for everyone, right? What do I want for myself? Love, peace, safety, freedom. That I want for myself, I want for every being. That is really what universal benevolence is. He says some other things. Yeah, this is the biggest piece. It's that disposition of goodwill and kindness to all people, to all beings. And what he says is, it's easiest to feel benevolent toward an inner circle. It's easiest to be benevolent toward those people who look like us, think like us, right? That's really what he says. But the challenge is to widen, hence widen the circle. That's the idea, is we're practicing widening it. It's not the closed, right, but the open. We're widening it to everyone. And he says that the way that we can feel that is by keeping our hearts as open as possible. That's how you know universal benevolence, is you keep your heart as open as possible. But here's what I've noticed in myself. It's easy for me to keep my heart open when I feel safe, when I feel loved, when I feel peace, when I feel secure, right? So how do we keep our hearts open when perhaps we feel threatened, when we feel like we're in pain, emotional or physical? I know when I'm in physical pain, I just, right, close up. How do we stay open? He gives us a practice for that. He says that we have to move towards, well, first, obviously, what do? Just awareness, right? Go back to awareness. Go back to awareness. And so I'm aware of some of the things that close my heart, but am I aware of all of them, right? So that's the practice you can do. When do I feel my heart close? When? Because what I'm here to do is open it, right? So I'm here to be aware, I'm here to accept, I'm here to forgive, and then I open my heart. So he does say, here are some ways that we cultivate and we can practice universal benevolence. We have specific intentions. 1, appreciation softens the heart. Have you noticed that? Appreciation is really recognizing the value in somebody. And when you recognize that value in someone else, you recognize it in yourself. Amen. That's appreciation. It softens the heart. Kindness, it opens the heart, right? When you're kind, you feel, wow, right, an openness. And then generosity, it gives expression to that open heart. That's what generosity is. So why is it transformative? It's transformative because it moves us beyond egocentricity, right? It moves us beyond the ego-soaked self living in an ego-soaked world, right? It butts up against that and says, there's another way of being, universal benevolence. There's another way of being. I'm going to widen the circle. My tribe isn't just those that look like me, think like me, act like me, whatever that is, right? It's everyone. That's universal benevolence. It's a beautiful practice. It opens our hearts and our minds and takes us beyond ourselves to include all beings. So, where do we see universal benevolence in the world? Or where have we seen it? When the atrocities committed by Nazi Germany became fully apparent after the war, the consensus within the world community was that the UN Charter did not sufficiently define the rights. So what came? One of my favorite women that I love to read about is Eleanor Roosevelt. She's one of my favorites. Yeah, she's amazing. So what happened was they deemed it necessary to have a universal declaration. If you've heard of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you know about Eleanor Roosevelt, you know about universal benevolence. So after her husband's death, she became the first delegate on that committee, and she oversaw the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's grounded in a practice of universal benevolence. It's the foundational document for the United Nations. If you have not read it, it has 30 articles, and I'm going to read just one to you. Not all 30, would be here all morning. But the first one says, and note, it says, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. I'm going to read that again. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. She was deeply committed to human rights, deeply committed to universal benevolence. In 1946, she visited Zelsheim, a Jewish displaced persons camp. She wrote that her visit was packed full of emotion, and she gave a speech. And in that speech, she posed a question. When will our consciences grow so tender that we will act to prevent human misery rather than avenge it? When will our conscience grow so tender that we will act to prevent human misery rather than to avenge it? That's the goal, right? That's the goal, universal benevolence. And I truly believe that it starts with us. We have to be tender and gentle with ourselves, soften our hearts, open our hearts, so that we can extend it to others, to everyone, right? And so that's what I have for you this morning. Know that I love you, know that I cherish you, know that I appreciate you, and know that I am on this journey alongside with you. Amen.